Hi guys, so we are still on our Brazilian folktales. Who knew there were so many? Just let me sort them out. Get my laptop open because it has just decided to crash on me, as is usually the way with computer technology. And there's only about 3 or 4 left, so I think tomorrow will be our last day on them. But don't worry, I have a fantastic story lined up for you that's finally arrived and we're waiting for it. So this is How Black Became White. One often hears the saying that one cannot make black white or white black. I said something about it once upon a time to my Brazilian ama. Now, ama means grandma. And she stared at me in surprise. Oh, yes, one can, she said. It happened once, and no one can ever tell, but it may happen again. Perhaps the senora has not heard the story. I begged her to tell me the story, and this is the tale. Once upon a time there was a little old woman who lived all alone with her little black son, who was just as black can be. The little old woman had not always lived alone with the little black boy. She had once been the mother of 3 beautiful daughters, the very loveliest maidens in all the country round. They were so handsome that they had attracted the attention of the wicked fairy, who lived in an enchanted castle nearby, and this fairy had been very jealous of them. By the aid of magic, she had tied them up in sacks which could be opened only by burning the sacks over a fire built from magic wood. The little old woman and her little black son searched long and diligently for magic wood, but they were never able to find any. It was a terrible thing to have one's daughters shut up in magic sacks. The little old woman had grown bent and weak and cross in her search to find the magic wood. If it had not been for the little black boy, she would have given up entirely. The little black boy was always gay and cheerful, and always sure that some day they would succeed in finding the magic wood. One day, the little old woman took her big water jar upon her head and carried it down to the stream to fill. It was so very heavy when she had filled it with water that she could not lift it to her head, even with the help of the little black boy. 3 fine-looking cavalheiros happened to be passing on horseback. She sent a little black boy to ask them if they would help her. They said they couldn't possibly stop. The little old woman was very angry. She did not know that they were on their way to the magic castle and couldn't stop. The same wicked fairy who had shut the little old woman's beautiful daughters up in the sacks was leading them on. If the little old woman had known all about the 3 cavalheiros, she would not have been angry. She would have wanted to help them instead. The 3 cavalheiros were very good and very wise, so they managed to get along very well. As soon as they reached the enchanted castle, the fairy showed them to their beds. She had marked each bed with a candle. No one before had ever been wise enough to blow out these candles. These cavalheiros blew out the candles and that took away the fairy's power over them. They were able to escape from the palace. When the wicked fairy came to put them in her magic sack, she found the beds empty. The 3 cavalheiros took their horses and rode back by the same road by which they had come. They stopped at a little shop on a corner which was kept by a good fairy, and bought 1 vimtem's worth of ashes, 1 vimtem's worth of salt, and 1 vimtem's worth of pins. After a while, the 3 cavalheiros approached the house of the little old woman and the little black boy. The little old woman was still very angry because they had refused to stop and help her lift the water jar to her head. When she saw them coming, she threw stones at them. Of course, this was a very stupid thing to do. When the 3 cavalheiros saw what was happening, they were greatly surprised. They had forgotten all about the little black boy and the little old woman whom he had asked them to help. When they saw her coming with the stones, they thought that she must be the wicked fairy in the form of a little old woman. The cavalheiro, who had 1 vimtem's worth of ashes in his pocket, threw the ashes at her, and it became night. The little old woman came on with her stones just the same. The cavalheiro, who had 1 vimtem's worth of salt in his pocket, threw the salt at her. Immediately a sea of salt water appeared between the 3 cavalheiros and the little old woman. The little old woman came on with her stones just the same. The cavalheiro, who had 1 vimtem's worth of pins in his pocket, threw the pins at her. Immediately a high thorny hedge sprang out of the ground between the little old woman and the 3 cavalheiros. The little old woman was too angry to think clearly. If she had not been so angry, she would have known at once that this must be magic wood. The little black boy, however, had his wits about him. He hastened to gather the branches even though the thorns tore his hands. Soon he had brought together a great pile of wood, like the piles which they make in the streets to burn on a fiesta night. The little old woman saw what he was doing and ran to get the magic sacks in which her 3 daughters were imprisoned. They laid the sacks on top of the pile of magic wood and lighted the fire. There was a great noise like thunder. Out of 3 magic sacks, there sprang 3 beautiful maidens who had been preserved alive in the sacks by the miracle of Nossa Senhora. The little old woman and her 3 beautiful daughters turned to thank the little black boy for what he had done. The little black boy was no longer black, he had been turned white. The 3 cavalheiros married the 3 beautiful maidens, and the little boy, who was now white, grew up to be the greatest cavalheiro of them all. The end. Second one, how the pigeon became a tame bird. Once upon a time there was a father with 3 sons who had reached the age when they must go out into the world to earn their own living. When the time for parting came, he gave to each of them a large melon with the advice that they open the melons only at a place where there was a water nearby. The 3 brothers set out from their father's house, each taking a different path. As soon as the eldest son was out of sight of the house, he opened his melon. A beautiful melon, it's going to be one of those days. A beautiful maiden sprang out of the melon, saying, "Give me water or give me milk." There was no water nearby, and neither did the young man have any milk to give her. She fell down dead. The second son left his father's house by a path which led over a steep hill. The large melon was heavy to carry, and in a little while he became very tired and thirsty. He saw no water nearby, and feared that there was no possibility of finding any soon. So he thought he would open the melon and use it to quench his thirst. Accordingly, he opened his melon. To his great surprise, a beautiful maiden sprang forth, saying, "Give me water or give me melon." Of course, he also had neither to give her, and she fell down dead too. The third son also travelled by a path which led over a steep hill. He too became very tired and thirsty, and he often thought how much he would like to open his melon. However, he remembered his father's advice to open it only when there was water nearby. So he travelled on, hoping to find a spring of water on the hillside. He did not have the good fortune to pass near a spring, either going up the hill or coming down on the opposite side. At the foot of the hill there was a town, and in the centre of the town there was a fountain. The young man hurried straight to the fountain and took a long, refreshing drink. There he opened his melon. A beautiful maiden sprang forth, saying, "Give me water or give me milk." The young man gave her a drink of water. Then he helped her to a hiding place among the thick branches of the tree, which grew beside the fountain, and went away in search of food. Soon a little servant girl came to the fountain to fill a big water jar which she carried on her head. The maiden in the tree above the fountain peeped out through the branches. When the servant girl bent over the water to fill her jar, she saw the reflection of a charming face in the water. "How beautiful I have become," she said to herself. "How ridiculous that anyone as beautiful as I am should carry water on her head." She threw her water jar upon the ground in disdain and broke it into 1,000 pieces. When the little maid reached home with neither water nor water jar, her mistress punished her severely and sent her again to the water with a new water jar to fill. This time the maiden in the tree gave a little silvery laugh when the servant girl bent over the water. The little maid looked up and spied her in the tree. "Oh, it is you who is responsible for my beating," she said. She pulled a pin out of her camisa, which is a shirt, and reaching up, she stuck it savagely into the beautiful maiden in the tree. Then a strange thing happened. There was no longer any beautiful maiden in the tree. There was just a pigeon there. At that moment the young man came back into the tree with the food he had procured. When the little maid heard his footsteps, she was frightened nearly to death. She hid herself quickly among the thick branches of the tree. The young man was very much surprised to find a little maid in the tree in the place of the beautiful maiden he had left there. "What has happened to you during my absence?" he asked in horror as soon as he saw her. "The sun has burned my complexion, that is all. It is nothing. I shall be myself again when I get away from this hot place," the little maid replied. The young man married the little maid and took her away out of the sunny places, hoping that she would soon again be the beautiful maiden she was when he left her by the fountain in search of food. But she always remained a burnt pigeon. Years passed, and the young man became very rich. He lived in a beautiful mansion. All around the house there was a wonderful garden full of lovely flowers and splendid trees, where birds loved to sing sweet songs and build their nests. In spite of this beautiful home, the young man was not very happy. It was a great trial to have a wife who was so burned. He often walked up and down the paths in his garden at the close of the day and thought about how beautiful his wife had been the first time he had ever seen her. As he walked in the garden, there was always a pigeon which followed him about. It flew about his head in a way that annoyed him, so one day when his wife was sick and asked for a pigeon to be roasted for dinner, he commanded that this particular pigeon should be killed. When the cook was preparing the pigeon for her mistress to eat for dinner, she noticed a black speck on the pigeon's breast. She thought that it was a speck of dirt and tried to brush it away. To her surprise, she could not brush it off easily because it was a pin firmly embedded in the pigeon's breast. She pulled and pulled, but could not pull it out, so she sent for her master to come and see what he could do to remove it. He at once pulled out the pin, and then a wonderful thing happened. The pigeon was transformed into a beautiful maiden. He at once recognized her as the same lovely maiden who had sprung forth from his melon by the fountain and whom he had left hidden in the tree. When the young man's wife learned that the husband had found the beautiful maiden again after all these years, she confessed her deceit and soon died. The young man married the beautiful maiden, who was still just as beautiful as she was the first time he saw her. They were very happy together, but the wife never forgot about the time she had been a pigeon. Up to that time, pigeons had been wild birds who built their nests in the deep forest. The wife often wished that they would build their nests in her beautiful garden, so she had little bird houses built and set up there. One day, a pigeon, bolder than the rest, flew through the garden and spied the little bird houses. He moved his family there at once and told the other pigeons that there were other houses there for them too. The other pigeons were timid, and so they waited to see what terrible calamity might happen to the bold pigeon and his family, but not a single unpleasant thing occurred. They were just as happy could be in their new home. After a while, other pigeon families moved into the garden and were happy too. Thus it came about that after years and years the pigeons no longer build their nests in the deep forests, but they always make their homes near the homes of men. Pigeons themselves do not know how it all came about, but the beautiful woman who was once a pigeon, when she had children of her own, told them about it, and they told their children. Thus it happens that the mothers in Brazil tell their children this story about the pigeon. There we go. That one was a little bit confusing, that story. Never mind. That's it for today. I will see you tomorrow for the final 2 stories in our fairy tales from Brazil. Have a lovely rest of the day. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.